In this video, we'll continue our comparison of ancient Roman theater and modern movie plots from the IMDb Top 250 list. I've divided the plots into 12 groups, and we've already discussed 7 of these groups in the previous 3 videos. If you haven't watched them yet, I recommend starting there. I've left a link in the description. Now, let's begin. Roman culture loved to watch rises and falls. From Virgil's Aeneid, where the hero loses his homeland, wanders, suffers defeats, but founds a new world, to stories of Cicero, who was exiled, humiliated, and returned to glory. Romans valued those who fell but rose again. But this wasn't always a happy ending. In Seneca's tragedy, Hercules Witeos, the hero, after accomplishing great deeds, dies from a poisoned shirt, and death is seen as purification. Plutarch describes Cicero's death not as an end, but as a moral victory. Better to fall than to betray one's word. Sallust in Bellum Catilinae writes about catastrophe, but does so with language of understanding and almost sympathy. Again and again, Roman stories turn to how a person finds their true self in the moment of collapse. This is not the Christian idea of redemption, but rather Stoic. Not victory matters, but how one accepts defeat. Requiem for a Dream, American History X, or Come and See, with their emphasis on psychosis, systemic oppression, and individual breakdown, would be impossible in Rome. They had neither medical nor social models for such images. Scarface, Goodfellas, Casino, The Godfather, Citizen Kane, or There Will Be Blood, on the contrary, with their bloody rise and fall, could easily have become material for Roman satire or tragedy. These are stories about destruction in the pursuit of power. This is one of the most represented themes in the IMDb Top 250, far more than in ancient Roman literature. While Roman authors also depicted journeys and transformation, modern cinema expands this narrative in directions that were unimaginable in the ancient world. Films like Interstellar, Castaway, or Life of Pi unfold in vast, unfamiliar spaces, across galaxies, isolated islands, or metaphysical dimensions. Their heroes face not just external trials, but also inner trauma, loneliness, and existential doubt. These stories reflect a worldview shaped by psychology, astrophysics, and postmodern philosophy, concepts that lay far outside the Roman mental universe. For Romans, the world was finite and ordered, and the journey of a hero was more about fulfilling fate, surviving chaos, or accepting divine will, not about healing the self or exploring the unknown. Still, Roman literature did explore transformation through suffering. In Virgil's Aeneid, Aeneas endures multiple losses: his father, his love, his peace, and through his journey gains a higher purpose and destiny. Similarly, in Apuleius's Metamorphoses, Lucius's transformation into a donkey leads him through humiliation and trials, with salvation coming only after he witnesses the sacred procession of the goddess Isis. This structure resembles films like The Lion King or The Lord of the Rings. The hero leaves the familiar world, suffers loss, endures hardship, and ultimately returns changed, with new understanding. Even modern comedies of transformation, like Ratatouille or Toy Story, echo this arc. In fact, their use of animals, disguise, or altered identity reflects plot devices found in Plautus's Roman comedies, though their optimistic tone is far from Roman cynicism. And yet, the idea that a person could change through hardship and travel was very much present in Roman storytelling by the 1st-2nd centuries CE. Modern films in this genre are often built around intellectual investigations, unexpected truths, and personal shocks for the protagonist, from Citizen Kane to The Sixth Sense. In ancient Rome, detective structures like those in Seven or The Usual Suspects simply didn't exist. There was no police institution, investigation process, or mystery-solving genre. However, mysteries and revelations were an important part of Roman culture. Public ceremonies like the Mysteries of the Great Goddesses, or processions featuring automatons, inspired profound awe and reverence in spectators. Particularly impressive was the Dionysus automaton, a mechanical statue of the god that could move independently along a set path, turn its head, and even pour wine from a cup thanks to a system of hidden pipes, levers, and counterweights. This technical marvel, created by craftsmen following descriptions by Heron of Alexandria, was perceived by the people as a manifestation of Dionysus's divine power. Unlike a detective story or puzzle in a modern film, a Roman mystery wasn't something to solve but something to experience. Mystery and revelation in Rome most often had religious or philosophical overtones. The mysteries of Isis, described by Apuleius in Metamorphoses, are accompanied by dreams, symbols, and rituals in which the hero seeks not facts but enlightenment. Petronius's Satyricon is full of half-hints, scenes with perception, deception, and unexpected unmasking, from Trimalchio's feast to magical spells. It's closer to absurd or disturbing worldview films like Chinatown and Gone Girl, but lacks their genre tension. The motifs of fear, premonition, and spiritual transformation existed, as did the feeling that reality hides something greater. But cinema gave this form a structure that was inaccessible to ancient theater. For Romans, myth wasn't fiction, but part of collective memory and a system for explaining reality. Without separating humans from the world, it gave them understanding through sacred stories and images. Roman literature created a poetic world where nature and fate are inseparably connected. In arenas and theaters, reenactments of sea battles with heroes and scenes from Hercules, Phoenician women, and Phaedra weren't just performances but acts of sacred repetition. Even in everyday life, temple inscriptions and votive offerings often described miracles, healings, magical dreams, divine gifts. Necromancy in Lucan's Pharsalia, miracles in Egyptian temples, Latin magical papyri, all created a worldview where the boundary between nature and the supernatural was very thin. Modern films about myth and the supernatural greatly expand the boundaries of possibility compared to Roman works. Films like Interstellar, The Matrix, and Blade Runner explore concepts beyond Roman imagination, as do stories about multiverses in Spider-Man, epic space wars in Star Wars, and demonic transformations in Demon Slayer, all of which would have been impossible in ancient Rome. This isn't just about fantasy itself, but the absence of scientific thinking, modern astronomical models of the universe, and concepts of other worlds in a science fiction sense. Nevertheless, the roots of many modern plots go deep into Roman culture. Apuleius's The Golden Ass, like Spirited Away, is a story of transformation, passing through a magical realm and returning with new knowledge. The Seventh Seal, with its dialogue with death, echoes Seneca's tragedies, where philosophy and death are inseparably linked. Harry Potter, with its initiation, rituals, and prohibitions, is thematically close to Roman mysteries of Isis and Bacchus. The superhuman heroes of Avengers and The Lord of the Rings find parallels in Hercules, Aeneas, and mythical kings from Livy's Ab Urbe Condita. At the same time, some philosophical fantasies in antiquity already anticipated themes of modern science fiction. For example, Lucian's True History describes journeys to the moon and clashes between worlds, and the revelation scenes in Inception or the mysticism of Dune echo Scipio's dreams from Cicero's Republic. There is also a fundamental difference. Roman heroes don't save the world, they fulfill fate. Modern plots about the multiverse, time machines, and absolute magic are much later constructions. In the Roman view, there weren't multiple worlds, but a single cosmos subject to gods and fate. Perhaps in this tension between knowledge and myth lies the ancient prototype of science fiction, not what will be, but what we can imagine. Ancient Rome is hard to compete with when it comes to violence as entertainment. Gladiator fights, executions in the arena, and staged mythical battles all took place in front of tens of thousands of spectators. Sometimes it wasn't actors who died on stage, but actual condemned criminals. Public executions could include theatrical elements, costumes, quotes from tragedies, and mythological references. People could be executed through damnatio ad bestias, when the condemned was tied up or released without weapons to be torn apart by wild animals. These were often lions, leopards, bears, panthers, crocodiles, ostriches, or even hippopotamuses. Descriptions of venaciones, hunts of exotic animals, are impressive in their staging. Mechanisms, raised cages, and scenes emerged from underground. Under Trajan, the celebration of victory over the Dacians lasted 123 days. 11,000 animals, 10,000 gladiators. In the 3rd–4th centuries, fights could go on for up to 200 days a year. These games were sponsored by politicians for popularity and votes. Spectacle in Rome was an art of power. Isidore of Seville in Etymologiae shows how theatrical technology served not the plot, but to amaze the crowd. This is closer to spectacles in Avengers or Terminator, but Romans never had the idea of saving the world, only showing its order. There's no apocalypse, only eternal Rome. In this sense, Tolkien's epic with its struggle between good and evil is much closer to Christianity than Roman mythology. Theater was more expensive. It required scribes, rehearsals, musicians, actors, and scenery. An amphitheater only needed an arena and gladiators, who were often recruited from slaves or prisoners. In troubled times, during invasions, crises, epidemics, complex theater lost support. What remained was the arena, crude but understandable, like death itself. After the opening of the Colosseum, Emperor Titus declared, "Romans, you deserve the greatest games. We give you a festival equal to immortality." Emperors used spectacles to demonstrate power and set the rhythm of public life. Unlike modern films, where violence is often a pretext for drama, in Rome it was a form of governance and collective catharsis. If an ancient Roman were to time travel to our era, experiencing our violent entertainment would be like a meat eater being forced to become a vegan. This is where Romans would truly show us up. Modern cinema and storytelling in general have preserved the traditions of ancient Roman theater while significantly enhancing them, becoming more nuanced and profound. Entirely new genres have emerged. Yet something that deeply resonated with us in antiquity has been lost, perhaps for the better. In the 5th century, Augustine of Hippo, a Christian philosopher and future church father, finding himself at the arena, wrote, "I didn't want to go there. They dragged me there. I closed my eyes, but when I heard the roar of the crowd, I opened them, and I couldn't look away." He describes gladiatorial addiction as a drug. The audience doesn't just watch, it inhabits the fight, losing individuality. Even an educated, moral person finding themselves among the roaring crowd loses their will. Finally, a thought to inspire you. If the Romans couldn't imagine detective stories with their investigative logic or science fiction with parallel worlds, what genres and art forms are still waiting to be born? Perhaps in 2,000 years, people will study our films with the same interest as we study Roman theater today. They may be surprised by the stories that seem obvious to them, but we couldn't conceive. After all, as Augustine showed us, our relationship with entertainment is deeply emotional and instinctive. Whether it's the gladiatorial arena or modern cinema, each form of art reveals what moves us at our core, what we're drawn to despite ourselves. And while we may not know what new forms await us, we can be certain they will continue to reflect who we are and what we value.